I know you guys have probably been bombarded with Kagura Bachi content, whether it be on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube, but in the YouTube business, you always gotta strike while the iron is hot. And that's exactly what I'm doing today. Now, I know that I'm probably the last person that some of you guys expected to talk about this new, hot, insanely viral manga called Kagura Bachi. I mean, the last and I think the only time I ever looked at a new Shonen Jump chapter was the first chapter of Time Paradox Ghost Rider. God, you guys love that video. Because if you guys don't know, I really don't keep up with reading scans of new Shonen Jump series. I really do not care, just because there are so many new series in Shonen Jump coming and going, it's just hard to keep track of. My general rule of thumb with these new manga series is to wait for them to get a physical release, just so I know when I start a manga series that I'm not wasting my very valuable time starting this series that will be axed in a couple weeks. But I just could not ignore this new manga called Kagura Bachi. I'm sure some of you guys have already seen this manga, whether it be on social media or you've read the chapter yourself. It has been literally everywhere. Not only has there been lots of speculation and discussion on the actual manga chapter itself, but there are so many hilarious memes and just this shitstorm of ironic posting saying that this is the greatest manga to ever grace the medium. So today I'm going to give you my thoughts on this first chapter of Kagura Bachi, and we're going to discuss some of the memes and a bit of the culture that is surrounding this series at the moment, a little bit divisive. So without further ado, let's get right into what I personally think of this first chapter of Kagura Bachi. Alright, so a very brief plot synopsis of this first chapter we have here. We follow our main character, Chihiro, and his father is apparently the most famous and best blacksmith or swordsmith basically in the entire world. And at the beginning of the chapter, his dad and him are making swords, you know, seeing how the process is done so he can take over and become this great swordsmith himself. We also get to learn a little bit about these characters' personalities. We have Chihiro, the main character, who is more reserved, lets other people talk instead of really, you know, being a real vocal main character. And then his father, who is serious when making swords, but also very goofy and loves goldfish. And we also have this character, I believe, named Mr. Shiba, who is the main character's dad's best friend. They go way back. We see a little bit more of him later in the chapter, but those are the main three characters. Then cut to 3 years later, we see our main character Chihiro, now 18 years of age, and his dad's best friend going through this city looking for these Yakuza members who seem to have some information that will be useful for them. So plot-wise from this first chapter, it really doesn't show us much of what this story is going to be about or the intricacies of the plot moving forward. A lot of it is still shrouded in mystery at this point, which is something that I feel like you really don't see all that often in these kinds of shonen series. From typically the stuff that I've read, you have the main character who declares his big dream, his goal for the entire series right at the beginning. But other than the fact that Chihiro is for some reason on the path of revenge, we really don't know his motives or his end goal for this journey. So the first thing I want to talk about is the artwork, and I believe that that's the main reason this manga went so viral in the first place. I mean, I think the cover or maybe some panels got leaked before it was even out, and people were already saying that this artwork is amazing, and it is. Particularly in the department of action. Now, you guys know I love me some manga action, and I think that it's one quality that can make or break a series. A series can have lots of action in it, but if the action itself isn't composed, choreographed, and drawn well, then that's just a huge deduction from your enjoyment. But from what we see in this first chapter, the action is crazy. I mean, there is some really cool shot composition and fluid action. I always love when action is fluid. It just looks seamless, like it's actually happening. I mean, you have these awesome panels where Chihiro is just cutting through a wall of people or spinning in a circle, dropping from the sky. I mean, it is awesome and again, super fluid. And besides just the action, the artwork when characters are just talking or doing other things is nothing to scoff at either. There's some really good shading and character designs that we've seen so far, but overall it's nothing I would say is too extraordinary compared to other similar series we've seen like Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen. And speaking of those two series, there's been a lot of criticism of this series so far. Obviously, having so much hype, people are going to take this series and put it right under the magnifying glass to criticize it at every point. One of those criticisms being that this series looks eerily similar to Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen, and I can totally agree. I mean, I haven't read either of those series, but from what I've seen, I mean, you have the part where he's taking his sword out, there was this water and a fish. I mean, that just instantly reminded me of Demon Slayer. But on the other hand, people have to remember, this is just the first chapter. There is so much time for this series to gain more personality and to find its own lane to differentiate it from all these other new-gen shonen manga. We really do not know where the story is going yet, so to call this a blatant clone of these other shonen series at this point with one chapter out is just ridiculous. Another criticism of this manga that I've seen a lot is that the main character is boring, and I can also understand this one. Like I said earlier, he's a little bit more reserved, which again is a stark contrast from these other shonen protagonists like Luffy and Naruto, who are very eccentric, colorful individuals who add to the conversation and don't really rely on others to do it for them. So while I can also understand how people think that this deadpan main character who's on this typical revenge story may end up being a boring manga or a boring character, well, it definitely could be. But again, we're still very early on in this manga's life cycle, so I say we just let this manga play out and form our opinions later. So yeah, all in all, I think that this first chapter was pretty interesting. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue reading it after every chapter comes out, just because, again, I don't want to waste my fucking time. Don't waste my motherfucking time! But I do think that the discourse surrounding this first chapter and this manga in general is very interesting, which brings us to what most of you guys are probably here for: the memes. I don't think I've ever seen a manga have this much hype, and I say hype because it's really hard to tell how much of it is real and how much is fake. The only other series I can really think of that's similar to this on the top of my head is Dog Ningen, which gets a lot of hype and praise for being, you know, a weird concept and title. But don't get me wrong, Dog Ningen is absolute peak, but that's just the only other comparison I can really think of right now. If you're looking across mediums, you could compare this easily to a movie like Morbius, which was so bad that people just decided, you know, we're gonna make this the most hyped up movie of all time. And you see a lot of similar memes to like the ones Morbius was getting, where they have Kagura Bachi, the highest selling manga of all time, sold a more billion copies. I mean, instead of me just describing them, let's look through a few golden Kagura Bachi memes that I've seen so far. Kagura Bachi got one chapter out and people are already making these literally insane fan edits. Like, this shit is actually mad impressive.
Black. Everything corrupted on my Kagura Bachi build.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna pretend I know what the fuck this is. Can anyone answer why it's always a fucking Yeet song in these anime edits? Like, I love Yeet, but I do not understand the correlation. I mean, yeah, this one right here is pretty hard to argue. An argument between these six would be priceless. I mean, you could just hear it looking at this image. It would be hilarious. Also, the first ever manga to get an anime and video game off one chapter. One chapter, and we already have our official SoundCloud anthem for the manga. Why is this actually going kind of nuts, though? And we just have all these fucking memes of just the main character, this fucking JPEG of him. I don't know why this is so funny, but my humor must be broken because this shit is hilarious. But besides all of the meme and fake hype surrounding this manga, there are some real, legitimate expectations being placed upon this series right now. Now, I won't claim to be too tapped into Shonen and Shonen Jump series and the whole landscape, but the way it seems, a lot of the more popular ongoing series are kind of coming to a close. I mean, series like One Piece and I believe Jujutsu Kaisen, I could be making it up, are going into their final stages, and, you know, people are looking for that next new Shonen Jump to become one of the new big three. Is there any definitive way to tell that Kagura Bachi will be the next big Shonen Jump series? Not at the moment, but with the amount of hype and recognition it's getting currently, it's definitely helping. I think that Kagura Bachi will definitely be remembered for years to come, but whether that be through being a actual good, high-quality Shonen Jump series that really fleshes out into something worthwhile, or just that funny thing that the manga community did on Twitter years back. Honestly, only time will tell, and though I probably won't be reading this series chapter by chapter as they come out, I'm curious to see where this manga goes. Will it live up to the enormous, unrealistic expectations it has right now, or will this be something that we'll just remember as a joke that happened, kind of like Morbius, and it'll just fade off into irrelevance later on down the line? So guys, that's going to do it for this video, talking about the first chapter of Kagura Bachi. A lot of hype surrounding this manga. Make sure you go down in the comments below, tell me, is this the greatest manga you have ever read, or is this going to be something that'll just fizzle out and is way overhyped? Let me know down in the comments below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more manga videos just like this. So yeah, this has been ThePromG. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and as always, hope to catch you in the next one.